Call a meeting to order.
Softball.
Rise to the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call, please?
Wonderjump.
Here.
Highmore.
Here.
Buck. Gardine.
Here.
Palmer. Here. DeHaan.
Here.
Klein.
Here. Please note, as a courtesy to members of the audience and the Board of Education, to silence your cell phone. The public will be able to speak during public comment if signed up. Do we have any more comment forms? All right, thank you very much. Our first item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is our board member reports. Let's start over here with Brent.
All right, just a few things that I'd like to call out and recognize. One is like the women's rugby team finished their regular season 6-1 and on to the playoffs now. They've got their biggest competition is the dreaded Rockford team in the playoffs, but hopefully they can find a way to beat them. But they had a great season. Their last game was pretty dominant in that one. The score was pretty lopsided. And then thank Mr. Garcia for the mass band on Friday night, having the younger kids out there. That was pretty cool to see that. Had a lot of parents around me that all commented on how much they appreciated having the junior high students out there being able to do that. And then just to call out for the football parents, the football season's coming to the end here, but it's amazing how much support we've gotten. Just like we feed them the varsity 2 meals a week and the freshman and JV 1 meal a week, and all of that is kind of donated from the parents and people bring it in and helping set it up. So that it's been amazing the support that we've had this year. So thank you for the parents on that.
That's great.
That's it.
Thank you for all your extra work on those things, too. Amy?
Took my mass band thing, so Friday was great. It was senior night also for the dog boys, and so we had all the football players and the dog boys too, so that was kind of a rush for me to get in there because I thought it was at halftime, but it was actually before the game, so but I did make it in, so that was really fun. One of the things for the Parks and Recs, there's been some kind of cool stuff. We're getting a lot of money coming through ARPA, and Priority Health is thinking about putting in some, there's some grants out there for, I don't know if you've ever seen these like community workout things where you can get on a bar and pull yourself up, whatever. They're doing a lot in Kalamazoo, and they're thinking about applying for that here. With the pickleball courts that are going to be started from Wedgwood, we're going to have enough that we could probably have tournaments, and I know that people in this community they're just going crazy for pickleball, so it'd be really cool to have tournaments. There is some discussion about taking that court by South Elementary and turning that into the horseshoe pits so that can be like one tournament space for the horseshoe pits too. And so it's really cool to see using different property by the schools, and one's by West and one's by South, and how we can use that all together. Cross country for middle school ended. We did really great. We actually had a first place winner. So there's a family that has moved into the district, and they have 2 amazing runners, and both of them do amazingly well. And in our 8th grade, he won. So it was super cool to watch that. We haven't really had that in a long time. It's kind of cool to see that the middle school is having all of their sports tryouts now, because I just cannot believe how fast it's going, that cross country's over, trying out for all these other sports, trying out for different Echo, that's in orchestra, jazz band, all these different really cool things going on in the middle school. Again, football, we had that. I want to take a moment to just talk about the academics in Grandville. My oldest son is very, very lucky that he gets to take all AP this year, and his AP physics that he's working on, he's also working with his AP Psych, he's using AP Physics, and he's had his AP Physics teacher check math and circuitry and everything else to talk about electrical stuff going on in the brain and all the lobes. And I just cannot get over the quality of education that we have in this district, and how people will move here specifically for the academics that are offered in our high school. It's very cool. And it's not just AP, right? We have KCTC, we have all kinds of really cool opportunities and wood shop, and I mean, it's everything is so high quality, and I'm just always impressed by that. So I wanted to give a shout out to that, and I think, yeah, it's just all going fast. So it seems like it's going quick.
Thank you so much. That was great. Bob,
Nothing.
thank you. Barb.
Just a couple things. I appreciate, Brett, you talking about the parents, because I think that's such an important recognition to make of how much they do give for our teams to bring, I don't know, kind of that thankful, grateful, come together, teamwork. I just really love that, and I want to thank the parents for contributing to making our teams successful. And then I'd also like to thank the administration for the diploma given to Mr. Nichols. I just got such a kick out of it when I saw it on the news. This older gentleman wasn't able to finish his high school education and then was given an honorary diploma, and he was so happy. And I thought, that again is part of our community relations. You know, we have to recognize that we're human and that we have folks out there that would mean a lot to them in their life. And I think Howie's probably lived his life too. He was quite the guy. So just thank you for that, to feel good about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great to see. Just a minute, I'm putting a note down. All right, Christy.
Shout out to Jordan Coleman, and he is the son of Katrina Coleman. She's a teacher at Century Park. He placed first at the tennis regionals, which then qualified him for the state. So even though his team did not make it, but also a shout out to the OK Red Tennis program. They dedicated their OK Red Tennis match, the conference tournament, to mental health awareness, suicide prevention. And obviously Grandville's part of that. So it was really Tommy Heising from Rockford, Scott Bont from Caledonia, and Tim from Grandville Tennis that initiated. They've been doing this amongst their team members for the past 3 years. So the other coaches, they did it. They got all the other 5 coaches, and this is Hudsonville and Jenison and, you know, big competitors, West Ottawa. But I'll read a little quote that they put on the MHSAA site. It was featured on their website. Tennis is competitive and intense in the red. But for the players and coaches, we see tennis as an extension of something bigger. It's about life, friendships, camaraderie, learning how to deal with adversity, learning how to lose, learning how to win, coming together as a family, and creating collective goals, said Rockford varsity tennis coach Tommy Heising. Every day, we try to live the Be Nice way, not only within our teams or within our conference, but within our lives outside of the teams. So they were recognized by the MHSAA. They were pretty pumped. We got a phone call. I wasn't at the match that day. I was out of town. But Mark Ewell did call me and just express how impressed he is with our program in general, Grandville, but then in addition, the camaraderie amongst a group of good coaches. Mm-hmm. So that's it for me.
Well timed with World Mental Health Day being this week.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first, a big thank you to all the parents and volunteers that helped make the Grandville Band Festival successful a couple weeks ago. That's one of their biggest fundraisers of the year, and that went off very well. So thank you to all those that helped with that. And then with the band, they were up in Sparta here this past weekend, and got to witness, I'll say, really kind of something cool with the kids. I'll say really going through and being successful even with diversity. So if anyone's been to any of the Grandville halftime shows or seen them, you see these big trees they have that come out. And believe it or not, those trees are made of foam core. And when they brought them on the field at Sparta, the band takes the field, they brought the trees all out, and at least half of them started breaking, falling apart, breaking. And if you can imagine, right, you're getting ready to compete, and all of a sudden you see all your backdrops just falling apart behind you, and just, you know, just kind of getting destroyed. The kids still went out and competed. They took second in their division, and second to Jenison, which, by the way, if you ever get a chance to watch any band camp, go see Jenison this year. Their show is phenomenal, unbelievable. But it was really cool to see the kids just still, it didn't bother them. They were able to work through it. And like I said, still coming second. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. So, exactly, show that grit. And then just finally, along with the football program, just a shout out to an individual, right? Football is a team sport, but shout out to an individual, Jaden Terry, Tank Terry, right? Yeah, 1,000 yards rushing through 8 games so far as a freshman. So that's just tremendous and just a really cool honor. For in the football world, and he's a tremendous kid as well. So very humble when you talk to him and meet him. Doesn't smile much, but he's a great kid. So.
You know him, Tank?
Yeah, Tank. Yeah. He's only about that tall, but he's still about Tank. But he's a great kid. So anyway, that's all I have.
Awesome. Well, I want to reiterate the amazing grit of Grandville bands at Sparta. I was there and witnessed it, and actually one of the props had fallen, and a mother was sitting next to me, and we could watch her son with the bass drum walking backwards, not knowing that he was about to trip over a prop, and she saw it, and I was like, cover your eyes, I'll do the play-by-play. Okay, he's down, he slid, he's back up, he's marching. And you could see the adrenaline rush, and you could see he turned that drum around so quickly, and he just went right back at it. We checked on him at the end, and he was smiling, so that was it was an impressive thing, but also just an impressive marching band organization and arts program here. And like you said, Jenison, Rockford, we are in the division with some very strong competitors, and every year it's just a joy if you get a chance to go out to Ford Field and see them compete. It's an expensive ticket, but it's worth it. It's very entertaining, and the work that the students put in is phenomenal, and we have made it there every year, so that was wonderful. Other things I saw this week, went to the robotics competition up. They were doing a tournament, like a weekday tournament to practice for their weekend big tournaments. And by the way, they're looking for volunteers for this Saturday at our district. So if you have some free time, they really could use some help. Reach out to Mike Everly or Doug Hepfer if you're interested in volunteering. But I got to witness their first opportunity to go up against students from around the county and work out the kinks in their robots. And this year, the challenge is amazing. They are running 4 robots at a time in the competition in VEX. And I didn't realize this walking in, but some of you know disc golf is kind of near and dear to the heart of our family. We have a son who's a professional disc golfer, and it's a disc golf robotics tournament. They have discs in the robots, and they're shooting them into baskets, and other ones are blocking them and sweeping them and picking them up. And there are 4 students on the controls on each side at any given time, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to watch their minds work, and you can see them constantly going, how do I solve that problem? How do I make it better? And then they come back this week and they do it all over again, and they make it better. And to watch them grow and evolve and work together and use those, STEM skills, but also a lot of creativity to get it done is amazing. So if you're ever looking for something to do, this weekend there's and actually this weekend I believe it's a drone event at our high school, and we are the first school in the nation to host a drone event outside of Texas, where Bell Avionics is at. Excuse me. Bell is who hosts the drone programs normally, and we are the first program to host outside of Texas, so that's a big deal. And that will be going on at our schools this weekend.
Who's our drone instructor?
Well, we have a couple of things going on with drones. We have the drone program at the robotics, like after school extracurricular, and then we have the program with Chris Groenhow at the high school. That's an independent study now, TBD for next year's opportunities. All right. Also want to say thank you to the administration and the high school for the proactive reports this year. I know this past week we had some concerns in the community. Also, thank you. I saw our resource officer standing in here to Grandville Police for responding. I know people are up late nights looking into things, doing their due diligence, and we appreciate all the work you all do to provide safety to our buildings, to our students, and communication to our parents. And also thank you for all the work across the district in prepping the PSAT and I'm not even going to say it right. Every year it's a different NSMQT. Did I do it right?
Oh, Lord.
I still didn't do it right. I'm just like, the test. My son came home and said it to me every single day, and I couldn't get the new words right. But basically, the SAT with the national merit qualifying portion of it was this week, and it's a lot of work to put on. It's a lot of changes in schedule. It's a lot of accommodations to make, and so thank you so much for doing that and making sure our students were their best for last week and communicating to parents about that as well. And I just also want to call out, like you said, with the academics. One of the beautiful things I'm watching evolve here too is we have a strong focus on many different pathways in our high school and that we can allow them to intersect. And we're seeing students who are in AP courses also attend KCTC for trades. I got to witness that this week, and some of them went out to, they study at the airport, but they also had the National Guard come in, so we saw our services and our trades and our AP students all intersecting, and they got to look at Black Hawk helicopters and look at the electronic components of it and talk about service and opportunities in ROTC and why grades matter to that program, and they came home pumped about it and have MREs, so I don't have to feed them for a week. So that's great.
You know, the Grandville did participate also in a career fair. I forgot to mention
go
that
ahead.
to the ISD, and not all schools do that.
Yeah.
And I know the health department sent a representative to talk, but I just really think that's great. Again, opportunities for our students to learn about careers that are needed out in the
Yeah.
world, like social work is very much needed.
Very much.
Anyway.
And free mugs, they came home with.
Oh, and one more thing, thanks to all the staff and parents who participated in parent-teacher conferences this past week. Those are late nights, and it's hard to pull it all together when you have multiple children to attend, but those points of communication are very important, and research shows that parental involvement is a key determining factor in the quality of education that a child receives. So thank you to everyone who made it happen and showed up for that to happen this week. We appreciate you being involved. That's it for me. Now on to you.
Okay. Just a couple of things happening in the district, huh? Great
busy
summary by everyone. I'll try to hit on a few things that haven't been mentioned. First of all, thoughts and prayers go out to the Sandy Davis family. Sandy passed away, longtime educator and Central Elementary principal here in Grandville. And got a lot of great stories regarding Sandy today. So again, thoughts go out to the Sandy Davis family. Lou Nichols, mentioned Lou Nichols, and thanks to Scott for visiting and presenting that diploma. Lou has a couple books out, by the way, a couple that he donated to us. One is called Souvenirs, Stories and Perspectives, and one's Memories Are Life's Highways. And what is really cool about these is it talks about, Grandville back in the 1930s, some of the stories that are here. So really amazing, and I think shed a lot of light on the time that he was in then. He is 95 years old, I believe. So but really neat stories. Anybody wants to borrow one or two of these, we have them, and would be happy to lend them out to somebody, but really cool. I noticed he has a Michigan sweatshirt and hat on, and I thought,
Never mind.
guy after my own heart. But anyway, sounds like did he get an honorary degree or a degree from Michigan?
Some type of degree from University of Michigan. Something in tool and die at one of their extension campuses here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. But I know Scott shared a conversation that he had with him and said just a remarkable guy. So we're glad that we were able to do that and get to know a special bulldog there. So just wanted to mention that. 98C is a fund. It is funding to reduce learning loss. And Scott is going to talk about that as part of my superintendent's report. So take her away, Scott.
Am I going to be able to pull that up? Of course I can, if I can find the mouse. Thank you, Roger. As all of you know, there has been a variety of funds provided for districts to address learning loss. 98C is the most recent component of that. Interestingly, about 98C is that it's a tighter time frame. So it allocates just over $52 million across the state as part of the governor's education relief funds and the relief funds from the federal government known as ESSER, at part of ESSER 2. The goal is specifically to address learning loss, and that's for LEAs and charter schools. It overlaps existing dollars that have already been allocated to support learning loss, but a tighter timeline. So these specific funds must be expended by June 30 of 2023, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But our estimated allocation is $35 to $50 per student. So that's somewhere between $200,000 and $280,000 for the year. And that's not dollars that we would ever want to leave on the table when we can allocate those to supporting students. The interesting thing is that it comes after we've already made ESSER plans. So we're shifting a little bit to see what else we can do to utilize these funds and continue to support students, and I'll get to that at the end. But I quickly wanted to go over, we haven't talked yet about learning loss, and we're just digging into that. So I'm gonna give some very, very high level data pieces about where we see ourselves with learning loss. And I'm gonna set the stage because my hope is to revisit this a couple of times through the year, and then again in the spring, we'll do a big wrap up to see where we are and what that looks like. But this is our NWEA map growth K6 for reading, and you can see last spring where we jumped back up from fall and almost to where we were pre-pandemic. And things, we always jump down in the fall or drop down in the fall, we know that, and then climb back up in the spring. But K6 overall, now that's all grades K6. We're not in a bad spot from the very, very high level view. Also, I will share this presentation with all of you so you can dig in and ask me any follow-up questions afterwards as well. Breaking them down by grade level, you will see first, second, and third grade. If you look at that endpoint, not far off or at all from where we were prior to the pandemic. Again, these are all of our first, second, and third graders in the district. When you take a look at fourth, fifth, and sixth, you can start to see, starting in fourth grade, and then a drop down where we haven't climbed back up yet. And this, again, is reading for all of those grades. We also do Acadians, as you know, 3 times a year. Acadians is formerly Dibbles, a reading screener, and you can see some of the same trends. Our Acadians data hasn't quite climbed back up where we were in that the 3 groupings of bars are beginning, middle, and end of the year. So if you look at the 3rd grouping of bars, the blank spot is spring of 2020. We were all at home, we didn't assess. Right before the spring of 2020, you can see we're not quite climbing back up there yet. But you can see a similar trend when you get down to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. The margin is still a little bit greater. So we see some consistency there on a very broad scope. This is our NWEA math map, for map growth. And you can see again, across elementary, we've really started to climb back up. Digging into specific grade levels, you see 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade again, nearly back up, or in some cases, ahead of where we were, and then 4th, 5th, and 6th grade taking a little bit more time to climb back. So what does that mean in a very, very broad stroke? One of our hypotheses is that the students in younger grades appear to recover more quickly, and we believe that's due to I don't want to say lack of complexity, but the skills, there just aren't as many yet. So when we're looking at learning loss for a 1st grader, there might be 5 skills that we need to work on. When we're looking at a 6th grader, we have compounded years that that take a little bit longer, and they layer. One of the other very important conclusions is that I know this was super broad, right? Specific learning loss patterns are not obvious. We can see that our upper grades are going to take a little bit longer to climb back. That's about the only conclusion, and generalization is unwise and unhelpful. It just doesn't help us to try to group kids together and generalize either by grade level, by gender, by socioeconomic background. You just can't do it. We know that COVID learning loss hit harder for at-risk students. But the number of categories for being at risk are so broad that you can't put them together in any way. So the best thing we can do is lean on our solid MTSS system. And it's one of the things that we've talked about, that we've been proud of, that we assess 3 times a year. We dig into what those assessments mean. Our benchmark meetings at the elementary schools just wrapped up, and they've already started Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic interventions for both reading and math. So those look at individual student needs rather than a very large scale, and they'll group kids together by needs. So if you have a group of 8 first graders who need the same skill, there you have your small group, and there they can intervene. So they will progress monitor in our system every 2 weeks, and so we'll know. By the end of the year, we'll be able to give a really good report about where we are with our learning loss. So what does this mean for 98C and this pot of money? On the left, I said we had already made a plan. When I called Heather and said, Heather, we got a pot of money that we need to figure out, it's making sure that we're not overlapping or missing something. Our 11T funds, which is one of the other grants, Heather, jump in when I misspeak about the monies. 11T required a certain percentage, at least 10% I think had to go for summer school, so we already allocated that. We did summer school last year, and we set aside money for summer school this summer, and tutoring before and after school. 51% of 11T had to go toward learning loss already. And so part of that we allocated for tutoring before and after school, and the rest of ESSER funds we've allocated for intervention, behavior, and academic support. One of the things we talked about at the beginning of the year was that we hired new academic specialists in each of our elementary buildings. A lot of those were our teachers that moved into those positions, so we're really excited to have those. We used ESSER funds already to fund those. I'm not going. I'm going to try this again. My slides didn't disappear on me. Oh, this is an older one. So what are we going to do then with 98C? Because we already did this, we have some of our, a small portion of our interventionists that didn't fit under 11T or ESSER funding. Let me pull that back up. That we can plug in there. And then because we added in interventionists at every building, we have realized that we need some materials and training. And so it works out that we can use 98C for training for both reading best practice and math best practice. And also, if you remember 4 years ago, we adopted the Envisions Math Series, K-5. One of the things we're learning is that it might be a little weak in the intervention component, so we're going to look for some resources to support math intervention. This provides us a great opportunity to do this without plugging into general fund and other dollars that we've allocated. Questions? I know it's a lot, and I talked fast.
So I'm slightly confused, Scott.
Yeah.
So this funding, let's say it's $280,000.
Yep.
Is it going into staff, resources, books, online? Is it going into tutoring? Where is the majority of this funding going?
The majority of this funding is going to be split in 3 ways. It's going to partially fund some intervention staff that we didn't have money for under ESSER, and that's a small component.
How much? Because you're already showing that we're
Yep.
already allocated to ESSER.
So out of that 280, maybe 40% of it.
Okay.
And then the rest is going to go into materials to help support our interventionists.
So when you look at the charts, if you want to go back a
Yeah.
couple, number one, there's a concern among teachers overall, especially in K-6, about social. So putting ESSER funds there and a little bit of this, the 98C funds there, that's great. But when you look at 4th, 5th, and 6th, right?
Yep, I'm on the reading slides.
And I
Yep.
know you are. That's fine. Because I
ahead.
think it's overall. We've got a hill to climb.
Yep.
And how do we gain that back? If we've got these funds, are we doing the most comprehensive and timely intervention? I don't know if that's you, I don't know if it's Roger.
Yep.
Responding to that.
Yeah,
Because when
I
you
think-
look at what we lost, we all want to gain it back.
Yep. And so a couple of things. When you look at this data, and I'll send it out, and I know all of you, so I know all of you will dig in. When you look at some of this high-level data, there are a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, if you look at fall of 21 into the winter of 21, we put some asterisks by those. We actually think they're lower than they would be because we did remote testing. Remember, we had about 20% of our students, and they were doing some remote testing, and we found that maybe our remote testing wasn't as valid. As we climb back, I am confident in saying that we're doing a tremendous job in three areas. First of all, our core instruction, our teachers have dug in to what they can do in their 90-minute reading blocks and in their 60 to 90-minute math blocks. They're amazing, and we know we have great teachers. The second thing is with our interventions, those interventionists, already, we had a district school improvement team meeting last week, and I think every school reported out on how the immediate success that they've seen with their interventionists in their building, being able to support them in a tier 2 outside of that core instruction piece. And then we do have money allocated for after-school tutoring. The problem with after-school tutoring is that it works for the people who can allocate that time for their family. When we cannot engage students before or after school or in the evening, we have to lean back on what we can do during the school day. And then it falls back on those two things again. But we've engaged more students in after-school tutoring over the last 12 months than we have certainly over the last 5 to 6 years, and that's made a difference. And we've been thinking outside of the box. Some of that 11T money, for example, we did a little pilot last spring into summer with the middle school where we partnered with Sylvan. We couldn't get middle school tutors to do it here. So we partnered with Sylvan for those families that really wanted support for their kids, worked it out there, and we saw tremendous growth. So we're hitting it from all angles and as creative as we can be.
That's awesome. Is our parents aware, and is Sylvan an opportunity this year specifically with 4th through 6th? I mean, how are parents reminded, and are they reminded more than once?
Yes. Let me back up. Your first question, no, for 4th through 6th, they haven't been notified yet. It's on our next admin meeting agenda.
Okay.
For the middle school, we have already continued that.
Nice.
And that's been great. It for those that are engaged and can get their kids there, and then we don't have to staff it, and it can be on a Saturday, it can be on an evening. So
So do you guys ever use that same model that like is with AmeriCorps, the Reading Corps, or all of those where they come in and they do pull out students individually for that reading academic work as well? Or is that, because I remember, I think in South, parents would come in and help read with students, and then where I work now, they pull kids out and they are reading, they're reading through the AmeriCorps reading core, Teach for America kind of stuff. Now, I don't know how, I don't think that we necessarily qualify for that all the time, but it's such a cool model, and the kids not only, I mean, we were talking about reading scores, math scores, all of that stuff, but they also get that social emotional support because they become, these teachers also, they're not district teachers, but they are, they're in the district working with that, and they have these awesome relationships. And it's just a really cool model. So I don't know, is that part of some of the things that
Not
we look at?
AmeriCorps specifically,
Yeah.
but we do have some reading support programs, even if it's just adults coming in to read out loud
And that's like your
to students, which is helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I think the a key component is it's a comprehensive approach. It's centered around best practice and centered around data. I mean, you're seeing big picture data here, but we have detailed knowledge and skills. When kids are lacking, and we're able to pinpoint where they're at and what skills they really need work with, and we have highly qualified people for most part that are working with them in addition to their classroom teacher, and communicating to make sure that transition of what we are expecting kids to know and be able to do in the class is carrying over when they're doing that more customized work with them. So I think that's a great way to get the biggest bang for your buck. It always has been, and I think it's encouraging to be able to have, because of some of the funding, to be able to have those support systems for our kids when they need it.
So to tie real quick into what Amy was talking about, and maybe you weren't going to go there completely, but so we've had parents out of the buildings, right? And now they're welcome. How are we providing an opportunity for parents to participate in this, I'm going to say, rejuvenation of learning for 4th through 6th graders specifically?
Well, I think that's building dependent. We're not addressing that in this. But yes, parents are welcome back in the building. I think the engagement comes within communications that parents get about their individual student scores. Those all go out 3 times a year. And certainly different schools will tackle that different ways for the upper grades. And the upper grades has always been different, right? Parents who are here will know it's not uncommon to see in a kindergarten classroom where we'll have parent readers. We don't necessarily have that at the same capacity at the upper grades.
But I think again, a key component, I mean, that tier 1 piece, that classroom instruction, we don't want kids constantly going out of that. That's so important. And then give them support systems, and whether parents are coming in, as an example, and reading with kids or doing some of those things, or the connection such as parent-teacher conferences from last week, having that dialogue and knowing in particular the knowledge and skills that my kid is working on, what they're doing great, so I can celebrate that with my kid, and at the same time, the things that they, that they're not quite there yet, they need some work, need some support. That's a great way for parents at home to support their kids.
No,
do
and
some
I
things
understand
as
that,
well.
Raj. I understand that. My whole thing is, especially at the upper grades, you have more reading groups,
Yeah.
right? And, teacher may not, they've got time to pull out 4 students. So they go with a parent. I'm just saying, parents have asked for a couple of years, let us back in, we're in. This is an opportunity to, I guess, use every resource we can. Why not use it?
And
That's where I'm
at the upper grades, there are just more years for them to have a bigger span. At the end of the year, one of the things that we will look forward to are 2 data reports. One from Acadians is called the Pathways to Progress. What's great about that is it shows us from the beginning of the year students who changed levels. So students who started below grade level, how many of those students moved up to at or above grade level? How many who started at grade level or above grade level and maybe slid? So we'll take a look at that. That's going to show us learning loss. And then the second one is an NWEA report of the number of students that made typical annual growth for their specific level. So every student, whether they start below grade level, at grade level, or above grade level, have a year's growth expectation and we'll take a look at those that are making that.
Okay.
You mentioned summer school on there. What was our participation like for summer school this past summer?
Great.
Was it average? Was it above average? Below average? Any idea?
Well, that's hard to level because we haven't done it in a few years.
Right.
So I can't say average. I felt like we had good participation. We had a cap in our elementary summer school. We knew we couldn't throw it out there and take everybody. So there were some cases where we had to turn some people away. And those were some tough conversations because our invitation started with the students who needed the support the most. And then they kind of climbed up the ladder there.
So any gains we've made in that summer school for this summer have not been reflected yet in that testing, right? Because that was all spring 2022 was the latest, right? So we would not have seen fall.
Correct.
So
Yeah, I didn't pull fall data yet. I mean, we have it,
Okay.
and we have it good to go. And I have in IDEX, which is one of our data systems, I have all our summer school learners identified so we can pull them to track them.
Even closer, better. Great, great.
3 questions,
Yeah.
but more requests for next time we talk
Yeah.
about this. Wondering if we can get data on state levels,
Comparison.
where we
Like
compare.
state
where we fall-
averages?
State averages,
Okay.
where we fall, reading, math, and any other areas that you have. Can we get national data, maybe from NWEA, on where those numbers are to compare ours to? And then when we get that report on the year's growth, can we also not just look at whether they met their grade level expectation, but actually how much growth they had? Because I'm expecting a lot of them to start, like if they're supposed to be at 110, and they started at, the average start for the year is 90, so they're supposed to have 20 points of growth. They might have grown 20, but they started at 70. And you see what I'm saying? Like, if they started way behind their grade level, I want to know, did they still have tremendous growth but not make that mark?
Yes, that's
You know,
part of that
and
second
sometimes,
report. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes that nuance is lost when we just look at
Yep.
how many students made grade level growth and hit that mark, because we need to account for the tremendous growth that students are having, making up that learning loss
Yep.
and still gaining, but might still be falling behind just a few years in a row now. So I'd like to see both of those as we
got it.
get closer. Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Nice job.
Thank you.
I also want to
Thank you
know,
for-
thank you for looking for ways to use the funds that don't create cliffs for us, that build into the programming and the good things that we already have going on. As you know, I work with districts across the nation, and I'm watching a lot of them shrug their shoulders now and go, what do I do
We have
with
an
these
amazing
big gaps
business
in my
office.
budget? And so thank you to all of you for the planning, not
keep
just
us on
the
track.
funding wise, but also to use it wisely to build up what we already
Well,
had going that was
Thank you
working
for
really
that
well.
comment. Yeah, it has to
matters.
make sense.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks.
Any other?
Scott,
Okay.
nothing?
All right, we have no old business. On to consent action agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
A
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? All right, on to regular action items. Just a moment. Some things. Our first item is the special education resource support purchase. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the purchase of instructional resources to support teaching and learning in our self-contained program classrooms for students with autism and cognitive impairments. These resources support our programs in both math and ELA in grades K through 12. The total purchase cost is $61,627.70.
Sure. Very excited about this. I'm going to turn it over to Scott,
gotta
who's
make
going
a
to.
motion.
I will motion.
Thank you.
So moved.
Support, thank you. Discuss.
Thank you. I promise I'm not going
We're
to talk a lot
excited.
about this.
Right?
Yeah, we're really excited about this. And I just want to start by recognizing the depth of this work. It actually started a long time ago, and we're not going to go into all the history.
Yeah.
But we have tremendous special education program staff. Angie started this work before she left us, and Caroline picked it up. But Katie and Andy and their team, who I know they'll talk about, they did some really heavy lifting that's probably not well reflected in my write-up, but they dug into a lot of standards. And when we bring curriculum proposals to you, oftentimes it's maybe a couple of grades and it's certainly one subject. They were looking at standards K-12 in English language arts and math for programs with students with cognitive impairments and students with autism, and trying to find a way to wrap around all of this. They did a tremendous job. So I'll turn it over to you. Just area to slide.
All right, well, I am Andy Cortade. I am one of the ASD teachers at Grandville High School.
And I'm Katie Veenstra. I teach the K-6 elementary CI program at Century Park.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. It's really good to see everybody. My name is Caroline Ernst, and I'm the new Director of Student Services, and I know most of you, but it's good to be here for the first time.
So we just wanted to kind of start our conversation, bring it back to one of Rogers' district goals that we've been hearing a lot last year and this year, and that's just closing the academic gaps that exist for our students by ensuring that every student reaches their fullest potential. And that's been our goal throughout this whole project and process. When we first started discussing all of our curriculum work and needing resources, we really kind of had to backtrack and figure out what our goals were as our program classes, which led us into discussions about inclusion and what does that look like. And so we defined inclusion as all students being included in the general education classroom setting to their greatest extent possible and based on their individual needs. And we really wanted to focus on meaningful participation in some core content areas. We discussed the difference between exposure versus mastery. So exposure meaning that all students have access to grade level general education core curriculum with their peers. And then mastery meaning all students have access to appropriate materials at their current ability level to increase their core learning. So we kind of have to reach that mastery of some of our special ed essential elements and standards before they can get that exposure to their general education core. And then just as a district, our goal of inclusion is to establish mastery of content in that special ed so that they can receive exposure in gen ed, not just music, art, physical ed. We want them in that core content. And then while we were working on all of this, we determined that our students learning in our self-contained programs really needed curriculum resources to bridge the gap of where they are right now and where we want them to be with our academic rigor in the district.
Okay, so when we talk about bridging the gap, the first thing we want to address is the why. So currently what we're doing is we're accommodating and modifying all of our grade level resources. We're also creating materials and resources to meet the needs of all of our students. The problem with that is we have very little alignment between our CI programs and our ASD programs within themselves from grade to grade and also from building to building. So we're struggling with having a continuum for all of our students. The level of modifying that we're requiring is to make materials age appropriate is actually impacting the integrity of our curriculum resources. And so that's kind of where our struggle falls, is by the time we can modify and accommodate our resources, we're losing the integrity that was intended to begin with. The second piece of why is it's the law. So free appropriate public education and least restrictive environment puts some responsibility on educators. And so our requirements and responsibilities as teachers and educators are to have all students access and exposure to grade level curriculum. We also are required for all students to participate in gen ed to their personal greatest extent possible. So that goes back to our district goal of inclusion and all students being included in that gen ed classroom setting. And then the last piece is the state and Department of Ed has established the alternate standards, and those are the essential elements. So the essential elements are created for students with special needs. They bridge the gap between the special education standards and the gen ed standards. Are based off of our Common Core standards. And then they also provide a range of complexity. So there's 3 different levels to meet every student exactly where they're at.
So when we started digging into our curriculum work and trying to figure out what do we need as a curriculum resource, we really had to look at our standards. A lot of links are included there. I know some of the examples of our work completed may have some ownership issues where if you're not in the shared drive, you can't exactly see them. But I just wanted to highlight one document from MDE, which just kind of shows you what our essential elements look like in relation to our core standards. So I'm going to skip down here past all the intro. So just if you look at this example from first grade, you'll see on the left is our core standards for the Michigan core standards, and then on the right is our essential elements, and you'll see that they directly correlate. So for each core standard, we have an essential element or a couple essential elements that hit that same standard at a modified level. And so with our work, we dug into what our gen ed teachers had already spent a lot of time doing, identifying their priority standards. Over the past years, I know all the grades and specific core content areas at the high school had looked at all of the core content and their standards and listed what are we spending the most time on, what do we think is the most essential for our students. We didn't want to lose out on all that work, so we went through and matched standard to standard and put our essential element right next to it and said, if our gen ed teacher said this was priority, we also want to make sure we're prioritizing the same standards. So for each core, we put our essential element right next to it, and then we just reflected on what our district had chosen and added any priority essential elements that we felt bridged the gap or that we're missing for our students in our content areas. And we did that K through 12 and created a whole continuum so that we know if we are starting a standard in kindergarten, it's going all the way up through high school with them and making sure we're not missing any content areas.
Okay, so now that we have everything aligned to our essential elements and our priority standards within Grandville, the next question was, how can we bridge these gaps? What supports can we put in place for our students? So as a team of ASD and CI teachers and supports, we determined that we had a couple non-negotiables. So our resources had to be evidence-based. We needed a common assessment. We needed something that would provide us a continuum across K-12. And the resources had to support inclusion and core instruction. That's our goal, kids in inclusion and for core instruction. And then we were also looking for materials that were designed specifically for our students with special needs. So our next step was to do a ton of research and digging in. We cast a wide net to anybody and everybody, basically asking the question, what are you using? What supports do you have in place? What's being successful? And we really found that a lot of people had the same questions, but not a lot of answers. So being Grandville, we decided that we would solve the question. We had to find an answer to support our students. So we connected with the ISD. We researched tons and tons of curriculums, and in our process, we found some that we thought would be a good fit for us. So we had multiple curriculum presentations. We got hands-on materials. Lots of questions and clarifying and just more digging deeper to see what would truly work the best for our students.
And then we landed on that
Yes.
ASD curriculum quote, which is that $61,000.
Yeah, and that's the total initial startup cost for the programs.
So then just going into the resources that were chosen, this was the ones that the CI department had chosen.
Yeah, so the CI department, K-12, you can see the continuum. We divided it into lower L, upper L, middle school, and high school. And so we are super excited that there is an option for the K-12 continuum. So the program is Voyager, and then the Read Well is the lower L section. The Language Live starts working with our upper L into middle school, and then the Language Live 2.0 is supporting students 5 through 12, but that really will hit our middle school and high school students. Just a quick brief about Voyager. It is a reading intervention program. At the younger level, it really works on those basic skills that students need, and then it builds upon itself so that the goal is for students to reach up to their grade level reading standards and their reading skills.
And then we're just continuing to
Yeah, so we already use Handwriting Without Tears in our gen ed classrooms, and that's something that we're already using right now in our cognitive impairment classrooms. And we would love to continue that because it's a great fit. And we also already use the PCR reading program, which is a sight word-based reading program. And so that's something that is a great resource that we'll continue to use. We just need to add more so that we have a little more depth.
So for the ASD department, the needs were a little bit different. You can see that we still stuck with Voyager on all levels, The only thing that was different was instead of PCI, they were more interested in iWords just because it has those sight words with corresponding visuals for our visual learners that the PCI was kind of lacking.
And then moving to math, we really were interested in the Number Worlds program, and that's a K-8 program. It's a math intervention program that really bases its instruction on the big picture, so making sure kids know that core that they need to be successful moving through the grades. And then that does stop at 8th grade, and there's not a resource beyond that. But Voyager offers Trans Math, which picks up right at that high school level for our students, and will meet them where they are and continue to help move them forward through their high school career.
The ASD department chose Connecting Math for their K through 6, and that was just gradually teaching those big concepts. It was a little more friendly to our ASD population versus CI, and helped them master the difficult ideas. And then 7-12, we also went with Voyager to help K-8 the CI chose a different 9-12 math program, but it's all Voyagers so that we can continue that continuum from K-12 and with our CI program, very similar.
So then the next question is, what's next? So how do we continue this work that we've started? So how do these resources, how can we use them to produce meaningful inclusion for our students? These are all intervention programs, and so they're built on the mastery of essential elements. And of course, the essential elements aligns right with our Common Core standards, so exactly where we want our students to be. They're preparing our students for exposure to gen ed core content. So again, getting them in for those core opportunities. And it provides age-appropriate materials. And because it has materials that are appropriate for our students at their personal ability levels, this will help us support them in gen ed for inclusion opportunities. And then the question is, how are these resources going to bridge the gap? They provide common assessments, so we'll have great data and information about where our students are, where they need to go, how we can best support them. There's multiple entry points, which is very exciting, so that's how we're going to ensure that all of our students are supported exactly where they are. We can meet them where they are and help them to move forward. And then this will just create that continuum that we are so in need of for our students with special needs. It'll be K-12, and if a student moves from a lower L to an upper L classroom, it'll just be seamless for them to be supported from one to the other.
And I'd like to touch on the idea of IEPs here as well, writing good IEPs. The Kent County ISD wants us to be doing goals that attach to core standards. So focusing all this work on making sure that we're working on our essential elements and tying all of our goals to standards, but also making sure with those common assessments that if I get a student from the middle school up at the high school, I understand the assessment that was given and how it relates to my content I'm teaching at the high school.
And then to continue our work, we are the ASD and the CI classroom teachers are all participating in the Kent ISD alternate standards curriculum. So while we were doing our work here in Grandville, the ISD was also doing a similar work. And we're super excited because we came out with the same outcomes. We just are, I feel like, one more step ahead and ready to get a resource to help support our students. And then we're also, our next step is we're gonna tackle scope and sequence with pacing guides for all K-12. So we are ready. Scott's pumped for this. We're super, super excited to be able to say, like, in kindergarten, this is what you're getting, just like any other student in our district would have. And so that's a very exciting thing for us. And then just continuing to work together as ASD and CI teams to really support our students and to make their experience at Grandville the best it can be.
Wow.
Yes.
Nice job.
Very
So,
nice job.
number one, thank you for what you do because you have a very difficult job. So as a parent of a special needs individual, I will tell you it is appreciated. I, for one, am incredibly excited here. So I'm glad you mentioned the IEP because I think the number one thing teachers struggle with is adapting the goals with how they're going to basically plan for the classroom. So by having this standardization, it's going to make your jobs, well, I'm not going to say easier, streamlined.
Yeah.
Let's try and say that. It's streamlined, but I'm very excited. So the number one question for Caroline, always got to have a question. When was the last time, if ever, we provided curriculum like this for students with special needs?
We haven't had this kind of alignment for our self-contained program.
Ever, I will say. I can't remember it. So this is very cool. This is very cool. I'm incredibly excited. This is a drop in the bucket from a cost perspective as to how this is going to help our entire special needs population. So,
And please notice, they did it the right way. They focused on what we expect students to know and be able to do before they just said, let's jump to what resources and materials are out there. Because you can do that and spend some money on something, and yeah, it'll have some impact, but again, you don't get the alignment. They did such a fabulous job aligning with that, having that inclusive piece in mind of kids with the same standards, the same knowledge and skills that we expect all students to be exposed to and to master. And they did a phenomenal job with it. So it's the right way to do it. And that's why I'm just so excited to see where this goes. You did an amazing job.
How big is the team that worked together?
It was all of our CI and ASD teachers, K-12, that participated either during the school year last year or during the summer. We had a few meetings to all get together and brainstorm. Even some of our new staff that was hired this summer came into our summer meetings to have a hand in the conversation about what we would be interested in for our classrooms.
I just
Well,
think
thank
about
you.
the amount of pages of standards that are K through 12, like, those things are thick. So every standard going through, that is just mind-boggling. So thank you, that's a lot of work.
Good job. Maybe a stupid question, but these materials will be used by the general ed teachers while those students of special needs are in the room? Is that how that will?
So our goal for our core inclusion is for students to access that gen ed curriculum. So
Yes.
we will use these materials to help bridge the gap of where they are currently to where we want them to be. So
Right.
we always want students to be using the gen ed core curriculum as much as possible. But when our students aren't quite there yet, we can now pull these materials and say, this is the skill we're working on. Let's use this in the gen ed environment to help support and get to that level.
Thank you.
Curriculum vitamins.
Yes.
So,
That's that exposure versus mastery piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
so first off, congratulations. I mean, I have to say it's awesome to see you guys are clearly very excited about this, right? I mean, it's been a labor of love, I'm sure, to pull it all together. So congratulations. And this is probably the second or third real curriculum change that I've been able to witness, right? And I'm just, you guys are no exception to this, but I'm always blown away by the amount of effort our teachers put into understanding, what's the goal, right? Let's start with the goal, just as Roger said. What are we trying to achieve, right? And then building a platform to get there, right? On a plan to get there. So just congratulations. I mean, you guys, taking your expertise and putting in all that hard work to help make our kids at all levels successful. So, nice job. Nice job. We'll look forward to seeing what it all comes out to be. So
I will echo all the comments and sentiments here. That was a phenomenal presentation and an immense amount of work and something that was much needed and led by our true experts. We are very fortunate here. And the only other thing I could think the whole time I was listening to that is today I was trying to explain to a team of 150 salespeople what scope and sequence and curriculum meant. And I just want to hire you now. I mean, that was a great presentation. I wish they were all here. I might take the YouTube video and play it for them next week just so they understand what goes into it. But echoing back what Roger said, it is important that you started with the students. And we appreciate that because they are the core of what we do. And you are the facilitators of making that happen. So thank you. Any last? All right. So,
I wanted to ask about the group at the ISD. Are they trying to maybe use similar materials? Do you see you've done kind of that footwork for others? Do you see them being like, oh, we'll just kind of do the same?
Well, Kent ISD started this journey a couple of years ago, kind of got paused due to COVID, but their goal was to create like a curriculum that outlined all the essential elements that they could then just give to districts, give to teachers, say this is what you're teaching for each grade level. And so we received that this summer, and it shows their biggest piece of work was for each essential element. There's those 3 mastery levels that get assessed with the My Access alternate assessment. And for the state of Michigan, a lot of those 3 areas, those 3 levels, were said defined by state or defined by district. So Kent ISD went through all the work to define what would this look like at each mastery level. So that was a lot of the work that they were doing. And so that was a lot of the movement and momentum from the ISD. But we were sitting here like, that is awesome, and we're so excited to have that, but we need something to teach that and help our students learn. So we were pairing along very well with the work that Kent ISD was doing, but we were also impatient to wait for them to continue the work, so we kind of jumped ahead of it.
Excellent.
Yeah, we were ready.
How soon can we start implementing this? Will it be like at the second semester, or?
We will order tomorrow. Hopefully, I don't want to get out of my
How long does it take to get the material? Is there any?
Pending order.
Yeah, it won't. Yeah, I have 2 reps waiting for my email. So I think it'll be pretty quick. And really the only thing that would take more time is some training that's involved in the different programs. And it is some time each. There's 4 programs. They each take a day's worth of training, but not every teacher needs all 4 days. It really is 2. So it's really more organizing. So in the next month, we can start that. So by second semester, we can have it up and running.
Right.
All right. Roll call, please.
Highborn,
Yes.
Buck, yes. Gardine,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Wonderjum,
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Yes,
Motion
go
carries.
order.
Congratulations. Send that email right now. All right, our next order is our summer tax resolution. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the attached resolution imposing a 100% summer tax levy on all school property taxes, including debt service, upon property located within the school district, and request each city and/or township in which the district is located to collect those summer taxes. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Support.
Annual thing, I'll turn it over to Heather.
So this is just our annual 100% summer tax resolution that I bring to you each October. Prior to 2000, the school district collected 50% of the property taxes in the summer and the other 50 in the winter. So starting with the 2000 tax levy, the district switched to 100% summer tax collection. And by doing that, that allows the district to better address cash flow needs created by Proposal A, which shifted the state's funding. So our year and the state's year don't line up, and the state provides us with state aid payments starting in October through the month of August. So September, there's no payment. So this helps with that.
Pretty standard
Yes.
operating.
Question. How many districts in Kent and Ottawa County do this?
I do not know the answer to that.
Only the smart ones.
I'm so happy that we do this. This was during Tim Raymer's term. But this is good stewardship of our finances. So I appreciate the fact that we do this every year. I would like to know how many do it though.
Excuse me, we have a monthly KSBO meeting tomorrow or next Tuesday, one of the two. So I'll put a little survey out and see what they say.
Thank you, Heather.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the high school security cameras. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the purchase and installation of additional security cameras at Grandville High School for a price of $51,141.
So move.
Support.
And Walt is with us to give us a summary of those.
So this represents the purchase of, I believe it's 20 upgraded security cameras at the high school, and I believe it's 7 new security cameras at the high school. Obviously, we have a fairly extensive security camera system already at the high school. It was originally put in as part of the 2013 bond, is when we did a big upgrade of the system. So obviously, over time, there's been upgrades as far as camera technology to improve some of the cameras. And then also, we worked with Adam Lankto, with Dale Karpowitz at the high school to try and identify some of the blind spots in the areas of the building where they could require some additional coverage. So this would represent the purchase and installation of those cameras and also the corresponding licensing to go along with that.
How many old cameras is this replacing besides
I believe it's
adding?
20.
It is the 20.
Correct.
You said you're taking care of blind spots. Is that because of the amount of coverage a camera can do that covers a blind spot?
Not so. Blind spots would be an area where we don't have adequate camera coverage right
That's
now.
what I was asking. So if it's
Yes.
20,
So some of that is, for example, if we have a lower resolution camera in the hallway, I've had requests from Dale where he says, hey, there's a student that's way down the hallway down there, but there was an incident, I'm not able to accurately identify that student. So an upgrade of that camera provides the additional resolution to be able to kind of zoom in and see what's going on where he needs
how many
to.
total cameras are in the high school?
I believe it's 156.
Okay. Impressive.
That hallway covered. Oh, no, see that one time there was a stairwell that was.
Yep, stairwells are definitely
Well known and
an
liked.
important area to cover it. So.
I see there's a lot of, the installations there. Is that installation including electrical?
Installation includes because the cameras are power over Ethernet, so they pull their power over the network connection, so it includes the cabling for that. Yes.
Perfect. Any questions? Comments?
Nope.
All right, let's do a roll call, please.
Dr. John?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hybor?
Yes.
Buck? Yes. Gardine?
Yes.
DeHaan?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes. Congratulations. Buy some cameras.
Walt.
Thank you. And our final regular action item tonight is Neola Board Policy. It's our second reading tonight. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the following revisions to bylaws and policies. The bylaws and policies are as followed and are also listed for you right here with color-coded copy. Neola policies, bylaw 0144.1 on compensation revised, policy 6108, authorization to use electronic transfer of funds and automated clearing. House arrangements, that's a new. Policy 6700, Fair Labor Standards, FLSA revised. Policy 7440.03 revised, Small Unmanned Aircraft System, SUAS revised, technical correction. And Policy 9150, School Visitors revised. Can I get a motion?
So support.
So last time I gave you the revised and new policy and our current policies. This time I've combined them. And as you can see, just a reminder, the green, that's an addition, and red with a line through it is deletion. Just a summary of these again, the compensation one, bylaw 0144.1, that's revised. It's really focused on W-2 for each board member. We already do this, so it's just, it's something we're already doing, but it makes it official policy to maintain accurate policies. Policy 6108, authorization to use electronic transfer of funds and automated clearinghouse arrangements. Again, that is new, so you can see there isn't any pretty Christmas colors there. It's just as the new one is, and this policy includes the components required by Michigan statute. Policy 6700, Fair Labor Standards Act, and again, that is revised. This one has to do with, the Fair Labor Standards Act mandated that eligible employees be provided reasonable breaks in private facilities to express breast milk during the first year after the birth of their child. We already do that, and you can see at the end of that paragraph, it says many employers attempt to provide similar accommodations benefits for all employees regardless of status or assignment. This particular one has to do with a certain group of employees, but in fact, we do for all employees, as it mentions. Policy 7440.03, small unmanned aircraft systems, drones fall in that, by the way. And this one really adds the new federal regulation, citations, really talks a lot about the operation of drones, the federal regulations of those, at night and over people in particular. And again, we already have this policy and follow language, but it does add the federal regulations within the policy, so it does change. And then policy 9150, school visitors, as you can see, is revised, and this should be considered in order to have consistent policy and to remain compliant with Michigan law. This has to do with SORA, or the Sex Offender Registration Act, and what needs to happen if somebody is a sex offender, as far as if their child is at school and there's an event and so on, the process and procedure that happens. And again, we've always had a very solid procedure for this, and this just continues to add to it. So, any questions about these? Again, the shortest board policy update of my entire career, with only a few. Wow, pretty amazing.
Thanks for the summary.
Yep, always appreciate that. For once, one twice. All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? They are passed. This moves us to the public comment section of our evening. During public comment section, we will call people up one at a time. We'll let you know who's next on deck. During public comment, we appreciate the folks being here to comment on educational issues and issues of importance to the board on district matters. We will warn you during your 5-minute time when 1 minute till the end. And also during your statements, please make sure you're directing your comments to the board. Audience, please refrain from interrupting that time period. And during your conversations, please remain civil and be aware that if your comments violate the rights of others under the laws of defamation or invasion of privacy, you might be held legally responsible for that. And if you're not sure about what you're saying in terms of validity, truth, et cetera, please consult with your legal advisor first. All right, our first individual up tonight will be Jerome Miller, and then he will be followed by Ruth Rondon.
Let's see. There was an event Monday. There was an email that went out 12:25 Tuesday morning that there was a threat of active shooter for the high school. I have not seen anything in the news. I have not heard anything additional from calling the school, from my kids, that anyone has been arrested, has been suspended, has been basically anything additional from the school other than everybody is safe. With things in the news, Vicksburg had a threat, and am I wanting school closed? No. But they had a threat. By that afternoon, there was a student in custody. If I, as an adult, was at Gerald R. Ford Airport and uttered certain phrases, I would probably get a set of bracelets and a conversation. So if we have students that are making these comments, whether they're making these through social media, whether they are making these in the hallway, what is the policy to keep our kids safe? I do not personally reside in the school district. My ex-wife does. I have 3 children in the schools, and they are very anxious about their personal safety. I really don't want to have to pull them from the district, but that's a conversation my ex-wife and I have already had for my children's safety. So that's the whole point of my coming this evening. So if we can get some sort of information.
Can you see me afterwards?
Sure.
Happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Jerome. Appreciate it. I also just want to know if anytime you have questions to contact the administration here. We don't answer questions during the board meeting. That's why afterwards. But thank you so much for being here. Next up, Ruth Rondon. Okay, thank you for being here. Next up, Tessa Jansma, followed by Michelle Thomas. Oh, did she? All right. Thank you for letting me know, Tessa.
Yep. All right, well, my name is Tessa Jansma. You guys have my address on file. I won't go on and on about the books yet, not this meeting. You guys spoke of summer school and all the funding that went to summer school. Our summer school program was a joke last summer. My son went for 3 half days and then passed the class. Like, if I didn't get my money back from that, you guys would have heard a lot more from me. Also, the high school seems to be all my issues. Your dress code. Can I change on my form, Kim, if you could have Roger get a hold of me after this? That'd be awesome. Because I've said something about the dress code at the high school almost every meeting that I've attended. There's still girls with full bellies out, and they do not have jackets on. And I mean, it's getting cold now. So like now it's getting ridiculous, but it will warm up again. And if you guys are not going to enforce this or hold Adam up, if you don't hold him accountable for the policies for the high school, change your policies. Or you can forget about any of us. You can't just look past that one and then get mad when somebody else does something else against a policy. It's either all or nothing. So either change your policy or address the students that just wear anything or nothing or hardly anything, because it's getting ridiculous. It's cold out. I seen a girl, like, her shirt came up, like, all the way up today. She was not a small girl. Like, it's nothing against her, but, like, come on now. It's either we have policy for a reason or we don't, right? I see the National Education Association. Those have been fun to follow. I'm sure you all follow that circus. Are we just gonna still associate ourselves with them? Or, because they think banning books is funny. They got a number you can text if you want a list of the banned books so you can read them. That's cute. We're all connected with the Grandville Education Association and all that. It's all connected. Michigan Education Association. Like, you guys, we see you. We see you. Parents are banding together all across the state. And let me tell you, it's not going to be good for those who make the decisions. The final decisions, like how you all just kept all the books that I contested. You kept them in the schools. And we're about to switch it over. And we'll have a new attorney general here in Michigan, and this is not going to go lightly. All of your votes are on record, and we'll have more books coming, I would assume, very shortly for you. But other than that, I just got nothing further.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our final speaker for the evening, Julie Dahl.
Good evening. My name is Julie Dahl. My address is on file. I want to talk about a couple different things, so forgive me if I bounce around a bit. But first, let's talk about academic learning loss. The presentation was great, but very troubling. Dr. Merkel gave to his credit, like he said, a very generalized, high-level data, which is good. However, this should be at the forefront of all of your minds. Your job here is to educate. We want to have academics at the forefront of everyone's mind. I've heard this learning loss mentioned one other time at school board meetings, and this is the second time. We've acknowledged the problem. No one said why the problem exists. No one says how we're going to prevent this problem from ever happening again. I could tell you these things. I could tell you why this happened. Initially, when COVID struck and there was lockdowns and all of that, I'll give you everybody grace for that. None of us knew what was going on. By the second year, implementation of mandatory masking. Third year happens, or the next year happens again. You're trying to teach kids to read, and you're like this, and how are they going to read? I had 2 kids in that exact stage. I have a second grader now, a daughter. I wouldn't put a mask on her because I knew that there would be academic learning loss. It's infuriating that the people who are in charge of making the problems are now trying to come up with a solution. There was a whole auditorium full of parents asking you, begging you, do not do this. And you did not listen. You did not listen. Okay, no one was crazy. Parents were looking out for their children. I think I don't know, again, I have a second grader and a kindergartner, 7th grader, 5th grader. We have testing numbers for second graders. She wasn't tested when some of these numbers are up. So the numbers are a little confusing to me, to be honest, because they look a little off just at first glance, because they weren't tested at a certain age and a certain because of lockdowns and all of the things. So to say that they're on track during these years, it looks a little different. But that's by no means personal to Dr. Merkel at all. It just looks a little suspicious to me. Moving on. At the last board meeting, there was discussion of the implementation of a new bond or a new tax, and understanding that there would be a shortfall of $15 million in the certain school fund. And I was pretty shocked at just the flippancy at which it was like, no big deal. We're just going from 16.5% to 18%. And it's not on actual personal income or personal property. It's just on the business owners. It's just on their property. It's just them. Who do you think employs people in Grandville? Who do you think is taking on the most risk? Who pays the benefits? Is that funny? I know when you work for the government, you haven't had to worry about your paycheck for the last 2 years, but a lot of us have. When you don't have to worry about it, sure, it's no big deal. When you employ people, when you take the risk, when you have we have to do a lot more with less. And then people like you think it's just an endless revenue stream. We can just go ahead and increase taxes on people who own the businesses. It shows complete ignorance and academic elitism. You do not understand how capitalism works if you think it's just a flippant, like no big deal. You might own your own business, but is it in academia? Is it with government funds? Are you getting grants? That's not how the real world works. And to just be so flippant about it, like it's no big deal, people are hurting out there. People are hurting. There is inflation. There are incredible rise in every cost. You're creating this generation. You're trying to implement this generation that is putting much more emphasis on gender ideology, on gender affirmation, and intersectionality, more than they understand corporate tax structure, risk, reward, any of that. We're producing a generation that is not allowed to question the narrative versus a generation that can critically think. We need to put the focus back on academics. We absolutely need to understand that people are hurting out there. No one's trying to ban books. No one's saying you can't have all these books. Okay, banning a book would make it not available to anyone at any time. Not one person has said that. What we don't want is the sexualization of minors without parent supervision.
Time.
Thank you.
I typically don't respond back. I just want to invite Julie to schedule a meeting with Heather. I'm happy to attend as well to understand the actual tax situation from last week. It was essentially a renewal of an 18 mills that already exist, and the drop-in rate had to do with a variety of factors that are set in the law. So it's resuming a tax that we had before, and we're happy to sit down outside of this meeting and work through all those pieces. It's a return of what existed. No, it's returning exactly what it was before. The law said 18 mils. So I want to sit down with you and work through those pieces so that we all understand. Okay. Please. The next board meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the administrative building. This meeting is adjourned.